Now, when I was a little boy, I got lost. I was out shopping with my mum in Golders Green. I got lost in Woolworths. Couldn't find her. You of a certain generation will remember that the counters for a child were very high, and you couldn't see over them, and you could easily get lost. Anybody here remember an occasion when they were young and they got lost? Yeah, quite a lot of you, right. And what did that feel like? Terrifying. Do you know, terrifying is the word that gets used every time. It's terrifying. Anybody in danger when they got lost? Anybody in mortal danger when they got lost? I was in Woolworths. What were we afraid of? We were not afraid of something tangible. We were afraid that we couldn't reach the security of our attachment figure. And many of you have been, as parents, you've been out with young children and you've got engrossed in something and you turn around and suddenly you find the child's not there. And what does that feel like? Terrifying. But it's okay, guys. Here's a spare. I've got a replacement. You don't like it. The baby doesn't like it either. It doesn't work. It's a relationship. You can't just replace the relationship like that. And it's the attachment bond. This is what draws you together. Anybody got lost a second time? There's usually one. Come on, own up. Yeah, 1, 2. You didn't like it. It's called a single event trauma. And you remember it for the rest of your life. Just once. And all you did was get lost in a safe place. It's a very, very powerful tool. And some of you who don't remember getting lost may have become lost, may not, may have become lost, but at an age when you didn't have the words that you can remember with the occasion, so you can't describe it. But you will be careful to avoid getting lost because you didn't like the feeling, but you can't remember why. That's a pre-verbal trauma, which you have a way of leading your life that avoids you triggering those feelings that you can't explain, because you hadn't developed a memory at that point, which was verbal, which gave you the chance to explain to yourself and to others what it was that you experienced. That makes sense? My father said to me, it's useful to think of the various people in a child's life arranged in a sort of pyramid, a hierarchy. At the top of the pyramid, you can think of the primary attachment figure, and usually there's one person, sometimes more, that comes to mind. But it's usually the birth mother, who's the primary attachment figure at the top of the pyramid. Now, below that are secondary attachment figures, or subsidiaries, my father would call it, secondary attachment figures. And these would include people like my grandmother. Now, just to be with my grandmother always gave me a calm and warm and comfortable feeling. I still have that memory of her. I was born in her house. I was there for the first 3 years of my life. And we developed a relationship which, I may say, my grandmother had 7 girls and no boys. My mum was one of 7 sisters. So I was a boy, so I was unusual in the family, and I was born in her house. So secondary attachment figure is hugely important. To have 3 or more secondary attachment figures is a protective factor. Not only are there lots of people who can look after you and love you, but you love lots of other people. It's a great thing to have, secondary attachment figures. And nannies should typically, or childminders, can become these very valuable secondary attachment figures. They shouldn't replace the primary like my dad had with Minnie, because Minnie was his primary, and he lost her. That was the problem with Minnie. She was the primary, and she should have been a secondary. Now, below that is a third layer And these are people, familiar people, but you wouldn't say that they were attachment figures. They're people like the grocer down the road or the neighbour, people like Uncle Fred. When Uncle Fred comes, you know you're going to have a laugh. You wouldn't want to be left with him. So these are these third level, these tertiary. Now, there's a fourth group. The fourth group, which is basically everybody else. And everybody else, we have a technical term. It's called stranger. Now, to me, everybody here is a stranger. I don't know any of you. It doesn't matter whether you're young or old, man or woman, qualified, unqualified, experienced, inexperienced, uniformed, civis, black, white, straight, gay. It doesn't make any difference. I don't know you. You're strangers. And babies are afraid of strangers. Actually, adults can be afraid of strangers. And this fourth group is something we have to think about, because sometimes we introduce very young children to people who actually, technically, are strangers, regardless of how qualified or experienced they are. They are actually strangers. And we'll be looking at that. We need to be careful about using a beautiful term, which is so seductive. It's called caregiver. Everybody now is a caregiver. It doesn't specify whether you're a primary, secondary, tertiary, or a total stranger. You're a caregiver. We try not to use it when discussing attachment theory because it confuses, it conflates, it just is not, it's got no clarity to it. It means nothing. It's a dodgy term. Try not to use it. Be specific. Because if you're trying to clarify what can be a little bit confusing, you do not want to add any more confusion than you need. I'm going to say, just here's a state of confusion. My father wrote, in 1951, my father wrote a monograph for the World Health Organization called Maternal Care and Mental Health. Okay, he was linking maternal care to mental health. It was republished the next year as a popular volume called Child Care. Now, maternal care in 1951 was the same as child care and the growth of love, which he linked to mental health. Nowadays, if you talk about, so child care in 1951 was caring for your child as a mother and child. Child care today means care of a child by anybody other than the mother. So when my daughter's mother-in-law got hold of Child Care and the Growth of Love 5 years ago, she assumed that that was about daycare. Child Care and the Growth of Love. And it's not. Nothing about daycare. It's about raising your child. Maternal care and mental health. Now,